Good morning, everybody. You are live from Steepleview Farm. Special shout out to Owen and Davis today, who are watching us live right here at Steepleview Farm with me. Glad to have you guys with me today. I have to say that as of right now, it is probably the prettiest morning that we've had so far this year. I went outside very early and it was dewy and it was cold and there was a little autumn in the air. A couple weeks away yet. A couple weeks away. We'll be there on about 2 or 3 weeks. We'll be in autumn, but it felt like autumn out there today. I just love this time of year in Kentucky. It is just so beautiful out. But I'm glad that you're with me. We're not going to be here long today. It is a holiday weekend, so I suspect that, like many other people, you will be doing holiday-related things, probably with family. I hope with family. But today we do the same thing we always do every Saturday morning. Let's check in and see what all farmers think about every morning when they get up. Let's look at the weather if we can. And the weather is... oh boy, how about this? Look at the weather. It's low humidity, less rain, little bit warm, not too bad. What a great looking forecast that is coming up this week. And if you're thinking about planting, let me just tell you, your frost date in my zone here is somewhere between October 6th and October 12th. Now, that means that if you got some things you want to plant for fall, you're going to be flirting with Jack Frost here very soon. Get them in the ground. Get yourself some row covers. Get yourself something to cover your plants with so that you can extend that season a little bit. Trap that solar loading that's in the soil beneath some cloth. Add a little heat overnight to keep your plants healthy once the frosty weather begins to arrive. That's about 4 weeks from now. You can still get some stuff in the ground, but you got to be careful. What can you do this weekend? Is there any planting that you can do to get a jump on this? Well, as it turns out, today is not such a good day to plant, but tomorrow and Monday, you may be off on Monday if you've been back to work yet. If you're off on Monday, Monday is a really good time to plant. So get out there and get some of those fall crops in the ground. Now, it's a holiday weekend. We are entertaining family. We have overnight guests, and we have a lot of people coming to the farm. You know, this is the time of the year that a lot of people head out into the country. It's a shame you miss all of the great seasons of the year here in the country. You know, winter's beautiful. Late winter, before spring arrives, we start selling produce in late February. We sell produce all the way up till Christmas, so there's a lot of opportunities to get out here to the farm, but this is the time of the year for sure when you would want to come and visit the farm. So we encourage you to come down today. We'll be here all day. The produce stand is open from, about 9 o'clock until about 4:30 this afternoon. Be happy to host you. We've got a lot of good stuff that we've harvested this week that you might want to add to your menu for the weekend. And certainly if you get down here this weekend, you're going to get to enjoy some of this beautiful fall weather. But because it's a holiday, I've noticed that all of the folks with live shows this weekend are doing repeats. I wanted to come on and say thank you so much for watching, for being a part of what we do here at Steepleview Farm. I wanted to tell you that it's a sad time, really, a little bit. All of those seeds that we dreamed of in December, that we ordered in January, that we started in February, that we started harvesting in late February, early March, most of the garden is done now. Really, the big garden outside is going to be mostly done here within the next week. We'll start deconstructing the garden, putting away our infrastructure for the winter. We'll move our production into the high tunnel so we can extend our season all the way up until Christmas. But I thought because we took a garden tour a month ago when things were just at their peak, that maybe today was a good day to do a little bit of reminiscence. Let's look back on our summer garden here on Labor Day weekend. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, folks. Stay with us. Our garden tour from August 1st coming right up. So guys, it's the 1st of August, and it's the perfect time to take you on a garden tour of what we're doing here this year at Steepleview Farm. The weather this year has been really very good. I mean, we prefer weather that is dry as opposed to wet. As they say in farming, dry weather will scare you to death, wet weather will starve you to death. And there's a reason for that. You can always add water, but you can't take too much out. And in hot, humid weather, you got a lot more fungal pressure. So this year we've had just wonderful dry weather, hot in the garden, hot out working, but it's really been good for the vegetables. So I thought today would be the perfect day to take you on a farm tour. Now, the farm tour won't take you to all the places on the farm. We'd love for you to come and visit, see our nature trails, our campground, our fishing lake, all of the other fields and beautiful places that you can visit on the farm. But today we're going to go through the garden together, and we're going to show you what we've planted, how we've planted it, and how it looks now that it's coming up. Some things are doing great. We've had a couple of failures, and we'll tell you about that right now on the August 1st, 2020 garden tour. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. So just a few years ago, we were like a lot of farmers. We were growing things right in the dirt, and we were struggling terribly, fighting weeds all year long. Now, once we went to no-till and we started using a method of composting, and we'll show you the compost, we're starting using leaf compost. It operated in a couple of different ways to help the garden out. First thing that it did was it improved the soil. It added organic material, which brought back in some of the fungi and the microorganisms into the garden on a piece of ground that had somewhat been depleted because of tobacco farming over the years. So we were tilling every year. We were taking the ground as we found it. We were improving it with compost, but we were fighting weeds all season long, like I'm sure most of you do. And that meant that we were paying labor or putting in our own time and hours and hours and hours and hours every week. A couple of years ago, we discovered from a video that I saw of a guy in Florida who was raising watermelons that he was using woven ground fabric. This is our pepper patch. And we grow an awful lot of peppers because we have a gourmet foods division where we make pepper jellies that we sell online and ship anywhere in the world. So because we're raising all of these peppers and we were fighting weeds and we were tilling and we were mowing and we were using green mulch, growing grass in between the rows, all of it ended up just being so much work. This woven ground fabric has been absolutely amazing. And so now we use it in virtually every patch. One of the advantages of the woven ground fabric is that it's very inexpensive. Each of these patches is 100 feet by 67. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 patches this year in this garden, and we have a couple more patches at another place. I can cover each one of these patches for a little over $200. By the time I buy the staples and pay the labor to put it down, in the first year, and this is a 5-year product, it has a 5-year lifespan, every year this has been just a huge savings. But in the first year alone, the cost of the fabric and the staples and the labor to put it down was 20% of the labor cost of keeping up with the weeds. Now think about that. 5-year lifespan, and in year number 1 I saved 20%, including the purchase price. It's incredible. It's porous. It allows water to go through. It allows oxygen. And actually it operates more like shade cloth than plastic, in the sense that the soil underneath is cooler than soil that's exposed to the sun. We do use black plastic, 6 mil black plastic, but we don't use that for weed control. We use that to smother out weeds in patches that we're flipping. This, for example, was green beans, our early green beans. We covered it now for about a month, and now we're going to come back and replant it with squash. As you can see in the little holes over here in the black plastic, we now have green beans planted in the individual holes. We had broccoli in there, and those holes were not growing anything, and so we planted green beans. I experimented for years with trellising systems for indeterminate tomatoes. Strings, fence, anything you could think of. This has been the best system I've ever found. It's 3/4 inch EMT conduit, electric conduit, 10-foot lengths, joins together with these little couplers. We use an 1.25 inch PVC T on the top of a T-post and this plastic netting that you can get in a huge roll, and it's very inexpensive. As you can see, you can easily trellis the tomatoes without having to clip them to strings and spend a lot of time. Now, you might say these tomatoes look a little puny for the 1st of August. They're producing, they're indeterminates, they'll continue to produce until the first frost. This is not our major tomato crop, these are just heirlooms. And the reason they look a little puny is because we didn't get to prune them as early as we liked. We just had so much to do. By the time I came back, I had to do some major pruning on them, so they've had a big haircut recently, but they're coming on just great. Behind me is a patch where I'll have to admit we had a bit of a failure this year. The failure was because this is the first time we planted squash and zucchini, which you see down at the other end, in the holes in black plastic. And they don't do well there. They do better in the dirt. So this year we're going to take the old bean rows, which were about 6 inches of dirt between black plastic ground cover, and we're going to plant the squash and the zucchini in there, the second planting. This first planting produced some when the weather was cool, but when the weather got hot, it just failed. It's just a terrible experience. Highly recommend against that. We have a bit of an Hispanic population in the community, and so we raise tomatillos. They are the buyers of these. They buy them, every one that we can raise, and they're still flowering, still producing fruit. As you can see, the fruit down in there is still relatively small. There's a while to go, but that's okay. These are our beans. Now, these beans are done for. We have already picked twice off of this row, and as you can tell, summer beans come on way too fast and way too big. And when you start seeing the beans show in the pod, they're not as tender, they're not as juicy. Oh, they'll still snap okay, and they're still a green pod, but they're not like the beans we get in the spring. So next to them, as you can see, we have more beans planted. Now here's a mistake. See this black plastic that we're solarizing ground with? Some of it blew over. See that second row? It blew over top of it the other day in a storm and smothered those out. But we've still got more beans here and the ones over there in the hole. And as soon as it dries out, we'll pull this plastic off and plant more there. If you can see these holes in the black woven ground fabric, those are burned with a weed burner. It's got a can on the end of a pipe. The pipe feeds gas out of a small propane tank in a backpack. We just come along, and as we touch it hot to the plastic, it burns a perfect circle. We have measuring sticks for different rows. So we use the yellow stripes to give us a straight line, and then we measure between the holes, either 12 inches, 18 inches, or 24 inches, depending upon what we're going to put in there. I also invented a tool, I'll show you on another program, another episode, the tool I invented to dig the dirt out of the holes. We then fill each hole with an amended compost, and everything has just, I mean, it's loving it, just absolutely loving it. Behind me here is our determinate tomato patch, and as you can tell, we're using the Florida weave system on these tomatoes. Now, they're coming on, so they're all going to be harvested within a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, and we've got loads and loads of tomatoes. Now, a lot of these tomatoes go into our salsa, they go into our jarred tomatoes, they go into other products, but many of them go to the market, and they're just beautiful this year. When we get to talking about fungal control, I'm going to highly recommend that you get Oxidate. We talked about it. It's an expensive product, but it's amazing for controlling fungus, blights, early blight, late blight, anthracnose, and a lot of other pests and diseases that will just take out a crop of tomatoes in no time. Right now, knock on wood, praise the Lord, everything is looking good just as it's ready to harvest. As I said, the first place I ever saw anybody using this woven ground fabric was on a YouTube video, and there was a fellow in Florida. Extremely hot weather, difficult conditions, but a big watermelon crop. And his watermelons were beautiful, and he was growing it on this fabric. So we tried watermelons. I'd never had any luck with watermelons until I put them on black plastic like this woven ground fabric. My goodness, do we ever get sweet watermelons off of this? And they're looking pretty good. We had some failures this year. It's not a failure of the crop, it was a failure of the seedlings. You can see these empty spaces behind me. Normally this plastic is totally covered with watermelon vines, every one of them loaded with watermelons. This year some of the seedlings failed, and I don't know what that was all about. We had a really late frost, that might have been part of it. But some of these open spaces you see would normally be covered in because the seedlings would have grown like the rest of the vines and the entire plastic would be covered and all of it would be filled with watermelons. This year we still got a lot of watermelons. This patch behind me is known as our salad patch. It's where we grow lettuce, carrots, arugula, kale, and other salad greens, as well as small seeded crops. This is a designated patch. This doesn't change. This just gets flipped. We don't have to rotate crops in here. As you can see, we've got a row of carrots right here, which we can probably pop out of the ground any day. And then we'll put more carrots in somewhere toward the middle of this month for our winter carrots, and they'll grow and stay in the ground all the way through Christmas. And don't forget, December carrots are the sweetest. We also grow salad lettuce in this bed. And right now we've got a bed that's ready to be harvested. It's a kale salad. It's a summer kale salad. The kale grows up a little taller than the lettuce and shades the lettuce and creates a cooler environment for the lettuce to come up underneath. And we found that to be pretty successful. People do like the red Russian kale to be in their salad. But if you can tell, the rest of the patch is pretty much covered with black 6 mil plastic. That's because we're solarizing it. We're killing off any weeds that might have germinated underneath the beds in the mulch, in the compost that we put down. So this bed will stay covered with plastic until we're ready to do our fall and winter crops. Under the white cover here is cabbage. We just harvested a bunch of our early cabbage. It's in the cooler, and we'll be harvesting more cabbage within the next couple of days. We just had a fella stop by a minute ago and ask me if we have corn, and we don't do corn. We don't do corn for the market because there's just no money in it. I mean, corn is a very difficult crop to raise. It's subjected to a lot of bug pressure. It's because we don't use chemicals. It's hard to fight, very difficult to fight, but we do raise some corn for our farm partners and for our family and for our employees. Now we have another patch of corn which is already growing. This is our late corn. This corn here will probably not be ready until late September, very end of the season. Hopefully the moths and the bugs will be gone by then. Here's another failure. We've always had a very good cucumber crop, but this year we had intentions to use a new, fairly expensive bug netting for our cucumbers. And because of the late frost and because we were late planting things, we just didn't get the bug netting down. So those of you who grow cucumbers know that there is a cucumber beetle that bites young plants, and there's a bacteria in its mouth that it transmits to the plants, and they don't show any damage until they start producing cucumbers. And when they start producing cucumbers, the vines wither and die. Now, we've planted another 2 full rows, which is several hundred cucumber plants. They haven't emerged yet. We just had 4 inches of rain. I expect that we're going to start to actually see a little germination right now in a couple of these holes. I expect that when they emerge, we're going to be able to get that covered, because the only thing we're doing right now is harvesting. And if we cover that, we're going to have a late cucumber crop too. We've also got cucumbers in the high tunnel, but these cucumbers, hopefully we'll have enough warm weather before we get a frost that we can get a big crop out of them, because I like pickles. We don't grow a lot of onions, but we do enough for ourselves. And this little piece in here are storage onions. We're in a zone that really likes what they call a short season onion. This is a mid-season, so they should do okay. We've raised them before and had a really good harvest, but these onions are in the ground until they get to be softball size, then they come out. Next to it, that weedy patch over there, we are ready to harvest potatoes. We've hilled them, we've tilled them, we've done everything we're supposed to do, but now they're ready to come out of the ground. That patch will be solarized with black plastic, everything killed off, and it will be available for winter crops as well. Here at Steepleview Farm, we're kind of known for our sunflowers. A lot of photographers come and take pictures for a lot of reasons. And every year we raise a big crop of sunflowers. Now, we have 3 patches of sunflowers. This patch here are pollenless cut sunflowers. Many of them are single stem. There's some multi-stem sunflowers in here. different colors. These are for florists and for sale. We have another patch of sunflowers that you can see growing taller over here behind me, and that patch is just for beauty. They're also great pollinators. A lot of bees from our beehives fly over our garden to get to the sunflowers, and on the way back they stop and pollinate our cucumbers and our peppers and some of our other crops. So it's an attractant for pollinators, but it also adds a tremendous amount of beauty to the farm, and people enjoy it, and we enjoy it ourselves. I mean, we think that it's just not enough to constantly be digging in the dirt and trying to produce something for sale. Sometimes you just got to do what you can to make the world a more beautiful place. And speaking of making the world a more beautiful place, right here by the road, very first thing you see when you come down our driveway is our zinnias and our cosmos. These are also cut flowers, but the colors are just extraordinary, and they really add some pop of color to the farm. Green flowers, these are enjoyed by an awful lot of people who come to visit us, and we enjoy them too. Well, that's kind of an up close and personal look at the gardens at Steepleview Farm. And before I say goodbye today and invite you to join us again next Saturday, and between now and then, and invite you to come visit us here at the farm, let's take a big overview and look at it from up above. Thanks for being with me. Enjoy the video and come see us right here in beautiful downtown Poplar Grove, Kentucky.